You're listening to Food Rebels and welcome. This is the podcast that brings you brands, chefs and live on-air tastings. A show that's dedicated to the more rebellious side of the food world where we celebrate the people who have challenged the status quo. We'll be giving you a peek behind the curtains and inside the minds of the people who are shaking up our food industry. You know me, I'm the show host, AJ Sharp, taste expert, food writer, great taste food judge and of course business owner. I love meeting new people and tasting new foods. So, sit back as we hear more stories from people in food who dare to be different. Hello. So, today on Food Rebels, we have a company who took a really well-known concept and made it better for you, made it better for the environment. I think you're going to really enjoy hearing this story. I'm really pleased to introduce you to Huib Van Bockel from Tenzing. Welcome, Huib.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Tell us about Tenzing. What is it?
Well, we set out on the simple and a difficult at the same time mission to change the energy drinks game for good. So we said, we want to create an energy drink that is from nature and also gives back to nature. That's basically in the simplest nutshell. So it's still high on energy, it's low on calorie, and it has nothing in artificial. So that's the kind of the main premise of the product.
And what inspired you? I mean, Red Bull is obviously one of the most famous energy drinks out there. There's also Prime and Monster and some other ones that have been challenging that space. What has inspired you to move into this space of kind of energy drinks?
I was actually at Red Bull for a long time. So I was I was head of marketing for UK and Europe and Netherlands. So I was there for 8 years. Loved it, loved the brand, but I just kind of at one point just fell out of love with the product, and I just thought should be a better way, and I think it was one of those classic stories where I thought, okay, let's do that myself, because I think especially like, the bigger companies like Coke, like Red Bull, they're effectively stuck with a product that was made either in Red Bull's case in the 80s or in Coke's case in the 80s of the century before, where people had different kind of outlooks on, nutritionists and doctors weren't as worried about like the sugar intake or the artificial sweeteners that's now heavily under pressure, also with the World Health Organization advising against them. And I also just wanted to, so there was like a start when I started, I was like, okay, I believe that there was a way to do this better that would actually benefit people if they would have an energy that was like good for you. So I believed in that opportunity. And secondly, I also just really felt like going out alone, or not alone, actually, of course, with a great team now, but like starting my own business. And so those two things were the kind of the driving force of going for it.
Amazing. And what was it? Because I always say big decisions there's never one thing that pushes you over the edge. It's often 10% decisions where you're like, oh, and another thing and another thing. What was the catalyst, if you like? What was the moment where you went, I've got to do this myself? I can't change this huge behemoth, this huge business that is a corporate entity now. I can't change what I want to change, so I've got to do this myself.
Well, I guess it is really what I just said is like this. I think I had one business before, so I launched a fashion business and I started at the bottom with socks. And it was really quite cool. It was right in the beginning of the internet, so it was just like, I thought it was back in the day where no one ordered the clothes online at all. And then I just thought, okay, two insights back on that idea was like, okay, let's say the boxer short was very nothing until like Marky Mark and Calvin Klein came along. I don't know if you remember that.
I can't remember Calvin Klein.
Yeah, exactly. Boxer shorts went from a £2 thing to like a £50 thing, and I thought, okay, socks, that hasn't happened. And secondly, socks is one of the only items you don't have to fit online. You don't go to a store and fit a sock, and they're obviously fit through your mailbox. So that was kind of the insight then, and I kind of I sold it without making any money or loss, which I don't think is such a bad for your first venture. So I always had this sense of, I want to start an own business. Looking back, I think that it's true. It shows you really what you're made of. When you're in a big company, I was Red Bull for a long time, but without me, it would have been probably, roughly as successful. So it's a hard. While if you're going at something, by yourself with the team that you end up choosing, you really see your own flaws way more. Like you go like, oh my God, she's not that good at that at all. Or even the things that you're really good at, or you might not think they were as good as you thought they were. I think that is really what own business gives you. And it's not only pleasant, to be honest, it's also very unpleasant at times. But I just felt like that. I really felt like going out there seeing what I could make happen. I think that was probably even the biggest drive. Next to the fact that I've always been very kind of, my first sock business, for instance, everything was going to charity, which was also actually, looking back, not a good idea because it didn't allow me to invest enough back. And I wrote a book called The Social Brand, actually, also, where it was really about like, how can you give more than you take? So I've always been interested as well. I started my business, but also starting a business based on something that you can actually, where you can give something back and do something good. Nice. And that's how I kind of started. And then actually what I learned from my socks adventure is that it's really helpful if you go into a business that you know something about. Like I actually knew nothing about fashion and I knew nothing about online businesses. Wasn't particularly good at both. So now I knew this energy segment really well, of course. I knew I liked it as well because I didn't enjoy that other job as well. It was very technical. Like, because back in the day, you didn't have those fulfillment agencies that would help you out.
Yeah.
So you had this pack all of the socks. It's a very logistical job, which I don't like. With energy, it's much more about communities and sports and, stuff I'm really into. So I think those are my two key learnings. Find something that you're good at and find something you enjoy doing. Because, let's say a purpose alone is not going to make it. Like my purpose for the socks is great, but I was folding socks in a box all day. No matter how great the purpose, that's not fun. Yeah. So, that's what I learned is like, yes, the purpose is there, but you need way more than that. You need to be doing something that you love doing and are actually better at than other people.
It's so true, isn't it? And as you build a business, it actually becomes a completely different job to the really cool idea where you were a challenger and you were like, everything is worth doing because I'm pushing things out of the door, to then suddenly having a more established business where you're a bit more of a farmer of data. And I've really found this building my own companies where I know I'm really good at getting it off the ground. I'm great at building it to a certain point. And then actually, I'm not that good at it anymore. And I need somebody else to come in who is a really good farmer of data, who's got that analytical mind, who's looking at incremental wins. I'm not so interested. I want massive wins.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, isn't it?
It's true. So although I think we're now at a phase where, because obviously I had bigger jobs. So that first phase, which I loved, I'm also really looking forward to this next phase where we're kind of, growing and expanding the team. I agree, and I still think the wins could be big enough because, then to kind of keep that going. So as long as I am still enjoying myself, as long as I want to keep going for the unforeseeable future.
I wanted to ask you more about that, but let's just dive into the sustainability side of things, because I know this is a massive part of the brand and a massive part of your kind of motivation behind why you've done this. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're making it more sustainable and how other people are doing it? Because I don't think our listeners, or certainly I have no idea how it's being done. How do you make an energy drink?
Well, you could argue the classic energy drink model, right? You think of your two most famous brands. They use high sugars and artificial ingredients. And with the money they make off that, they invest that in, let's say, carbon guzzling marketing machine, right? Formula Ones, motorsports, monster trucks. And so with us, we just flipped that model and we said we take all our energy from nature so that you get energized in the best possible way. And then we invest that back into communities and into people, into health and into nature. It's changing that kind of bad old circle of energy drinks. And so what we do is actually there's twofold from our sustainability. So it starts, I think, and I guess it's always so important if people start their own business. I always say, don't start with why, don't start with a purpose, start with a product. You need to have a product that delivers. There's always examples of Apple started with why. No, they didn't. They started with an amazing product, right?
Right.
And I think that's what we're passionate about. And that is, again, if you start in a business, like I just said before, all the incumbents are basically with the recipe that was 30 years ago. I always say if Coca-Cola CEO and the Red Bull CEO change their ingredients and make it healthy and not lose any customer, of course they would. They're not let's put more sugar into them, But they can't because they're stuck, Coke tried to change their recipe in the 80s and, it was a big case and everyone just drops away. So I think that gives entrepreneurs or innovators the opportunity to come into a market and really just change a product that is, of the needs of today. So it really started for me all natural ingredients, 60% less sugar. That was also a key element in energy. So we do a lot of research now with our fixed customer base in our communities, and 90% gets the same or more energy than, let's say, the old energy drink, and no crash. So that has really come across. So that's how we try to design the product. So there's two reasons, because the caffeine and all the other is artificial. So you get like an unnatural, let's say, caffeine spike. And with us, it's a combination of green coffee and green tea. So the L-theanine in the green tea kind of elongates the energy boost. And then secondly, they're very high in sugar. And we've got 60% of sugar, so 4.5 grams of sugar per 100 ml. And that is exactly the same as your blood sugar level. So you don't get that spike. So I think that's why people start drinking Tenzing really because they're just looking for a healthier alternative. And they keep drinking it because they think the taste is great and the effect is better.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And that is really where it all starts. So you can have the coolest brand. Our loyalty is above 80%, while an average loyalty in the category is around about 50%. So I think that's what you've got to have, because then you've got to then you can expand your communities and the amount of people drinking your product. But if you don't have people coming back, it's like a leaky bucket, as we always say. Then it's no use. Mm-hmm. So I think that the key element is to start with the product, and then after that we said, okay, but because we're passionate about nature, we make sure that, for instance, we're the first ever soft drink in the world to carbon label. So for the viewers at home, pointing at my little carbon label. So we know everything, our full carbon label, our whole footprint from crop to can. We put it on the can, so we let people know what our footprint is. We're the only energy drinks globally that's B Corp certified. We use Rainforest Alliance green tea. We have an infinite recycled aluminium can. Our aluminium is now 78% from recycled material, one of the highest in the category. So yeah, we're always making sure that our product also works from a sustainability level. Secondly, what we do on sustainability is in our community. So we've got like kind of 3 core communities: climbing, running, and surfing. And in the climbing world, what we've done is we built bins on the way to Everest. So we've built and maintained about 15 bins. Used to be very littered, really helping making that kind of a problem of the past. For running, we've got the Clean Air running tracker. So it allows you to find clean air to run in the big smoke here in London, because it's very kind of, can be very polluted. So we always try and find something that is actually a beneficial, sustainable angle for our community. So that instead of like organizing stuff that you can watch online, we organize community events where we kind of give back.
That's amazing. So are these apps that you can use?
Yeah, so the bins is not an app. That's just we work with the local Sagarmatha. We work with the Tenzing. So there's also a story. It was based on Sherpa Tenzing. So our story actually, and I wanted to create an energy drink that was all natural. I was traveling, found out what the Sherpas drink, and they drink a really strong tea with salt and a lemon tea, and that became the basis of our recipe. So it's a triple hit of natural caffeine, vitamin C, and electrolytes. I wanted to name it after Tenzing, the first man on Mount Everest, with Edmund Hillary. Reached out to the family, and we worked closely with them ever since. They're partners in the business. And that was also actually, it was Jumling, one of the Tenzing son's ideas, to build these bins. So together with him, we've built these bins over the years in Everest. And then the Clean Air Tracker, that's indeed an app. So it's actually down now. We're bringing it back early next year. But we're using all the data from Imperial College. So Imperial has all the live data from London, but it wasn't being used. And we've created an app, and we to link that with your Strava to find the clean air in London.
I love that. It's a practical thing that's actually making life better for people. Like you say, if you want to go out, whether you're walking the dog or running, doesn't really matter. Who are searching for better water, better air. It's really cool. It's really actually practical and helping people right where they are. This is really cool. Yeah. And I had no idea that it was named after Sherpa Tenzing.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So the caffeine, did you say all the caffeine comes from like a green tea base? Is that where it comes from?
Green coffee and green tea. It's a combination.
Okay.
Yeah. So green coffee is literally where we kind of take the caffeine out of the green unroasted bean, which is also actually beneficial versus coffee. Because let's say, a lot of people get like stomach problems with coffee or, and I think that's because it's a roasted bean. It's effectively like, how they say it's not great to have like overly roasted meat. A black bean is literally roasted. So, we use the green beans, take the caffeine out of there. So it's also more easy on the stomach, and then add the green tea for kind of the L-theanine to help with focus and slightly more relaxing elements that kind of helps you focus together with the caffeine. So it's called a nootropic effectively when you have the caffeine and the L-theanine together.
Amazing. And can you tell me about all the different flavors that you can try?
Yes, well, we've got many. So our biggest flavor is actually the raspberry yuzu. So that was also our first flavor. So we started with an original. So we had it for 2 years. We just had one flavor. Then added the raspberry yuzu, which actually became our best-selling drink overnight. We've got a lime and mint, and then we've got a pineapple passion fruit, and we've just launched this one literally 2 weeks ago. It's called the Fiery Mango, and the idea was really to cater and craft a drink specifically for winter. So winter is obviously known for the most low mood, low energy, especially January, February. And it really is, there's a physical element to it where everyone nearly, especially in the north of UK and in London, has a vitamin D shortage. But what people don't realize, if you just have vitamin D, it kind of leaves the body. You need magnesium to activate that vitamin D. So we've been working on this drink for like nearly 2 years with nutritionists and like lots of desk research. So we've got a recipe now with vitamin D, vitamin C, magnesium to activate the D, and then lion's mane also to help with mood. So that's kind of our newest innovation. It's exclusive at Tesco. Yeah, it's something I'm really proud about. And it's also like quite funny because our big competitor, can't say the name, but they launched a winter edition as well. And all they added was a blue coloring agent called Brilliant Blue FCF, which is a petroleum-based dye.
It's giving me Blue Smarty vibes.
I know, but it is like you should see what's wrong with the drinks industry in that sense, where like the winter edition is just a new artificial coloring agent. Where we've really gone above and beyond and found like in nature vitamin D we source from pine trees, for instance, and the magnesium is from the Irish Sea. So we really go above and beyond to find the best ingredients that really work. So yeah, that's our newest kind of innovation that I'm super proud about. Yeah,
I'll have a look for that one at Tesco then. Thanks so much for that. I mean, what's your favourite way of using the product? Is this, you're just about to go and play a football match and you have one before you start? Is it for afterwards? Is it a mixer? Is it at work? I mean, what's the perfect time to use the product?
The two main occasions we see, so obviously we don't use it at all, unlike our big competitor who's very much a mixer like the Jaeger bombs, and we were not available at all in kind of the on-premise or the bars or clubs. So our two main occasions is actually sport and work or study. So, because it uplifts both body and mind. Actually, our number one occasion, we just did a research with our community, and our number one occasion is indeed like before, during, after sport. So before a run, we do a lot of running, before you go on a run, before you go on a climb. That's the number one, but closely followed by university and work. We are actually the number one energy drink now in the whole climbing community. So there's about 150 climbing walls in the UK. We're by far the number one energy drink, or a drink full stop in there. We are the number one energy drink in like London universities. So we've passed Red Bull there. We're the number one energy drink in like all more forward-thinking offices. So like Google, WeWork, they did a test between us and Red Bull, and we outsold Red Bull. We're more that kind of, slightly, how would you say, like health conscious, young
the
worker.
Thinking person's choice, really.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, exactly. So because it has that concentration element with the L-theanine from the green tea. And I think because it's low calorie and has no artificial sweeteners, nothing, it's just a better option.
And it's the kind of people that actually look at the credentials of a product, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when I say thinking people, I don't mean that in an intellectually snobbish way. I mean, it's somebody who really puts thought into what they're eating. They probably care about ultra-processed food and things like that. So they're actually thinking about what they're imbibing.
Because at the end of the day, most of us don't have the time. We're all of us, thinking, non-thinking, whoever might say it, however you might define anyone. It's just like we don't have the time to think when you're into in a supermarket. So we're just defined by our habits, and that is my clear challenge to just get that habit out of someone's system. And I also I think when you start your own business, you think it's going to be easier. I think every entrepreneur is incredibly naive.
Yeah, for sure. So you never do it, right?
You never do it. So you go, because you go like, oh, I know that 80%, we tested that 80% of the people that drink energy drinks are worried about the health. And there's two things: artificial ingredients, artificial sweeteners, artificial colorings, and then high sugars. So we're like, brilliant. If we tackle both, we're low calorie, no artificial sweeteners, ingredients whatsoever, people will flock to Tenzing, but it doesn't work that way. Like, we have grown fast and we're growing well, but Red Bull is still bigger. Like, after all these years, you're like, why? And it's funny because we test every now and then just showing the ingredients. So we show our ingredients and our competitors' ingredients. And we say, what if you were had no habits, you'd no brand, and you wanted energy, which of these sets of ingredients would you take? And more than 80% would take our drink. So just purely on product, people would take a Tenzing. But it just takes time people don't have the time. I understand that. Like, you don't go to every in store and you look on the back of every can. Mm-hmm. So it's about winning people over, like one person at a time.
It is. And for you, it's not necessarily taking market share away from Red Bull, because I guess there is a Red Bull buyer.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that I don't drink energy drinks. I don't really drink caffeine. But I'd probably consider a Tenzing because it's got a very different way in which it's been made. So you might convert somebody like me into your category who wouldn't be a convert. I wouldn't be swapping brands. I'd literally be arriving into the category for very different reasons because of, all the credentials you've just talked through. Actually makes it really enticing to me.
And that is exactly what we see. We see about 40% is totally new to the category, which is a huge amount, of course, right?
It's huge, yeah.
You wouldn't think that from any other category I can think of, where you'd have 40% totally new, and then about 60% is current. Within that, Red Bull is the biggest, but because they also are the biggest, and kind of from price perspective, more or less the same. It's all about getting new people in, and then current users moving into the business.
Where can we buy it?
We're available in every supermarket in the UK. Tesco is our first ever retailer to stock it. We're in Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, Co-op. Everything.
Amazing.
Yeah. And online. Our online business is going really well as well. You can just get it on tenzingnaturalenergy.com. We have subscriptions, everything. So our online business, groceries for our first, and the second is kind of just our online business. But we're also available in a lot of like gyms, like climbing walls, like I said, offices, universities.
I was really interested to hear your kind of your mindset around setting up the business. And obviously this is kind of a third iteration of your professional career. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were starting this business, what would it be?
I was always a massive fan of my very first book I read about entrepreneurship was Losing My Virginity from Richard Branson. And I remember reading it. It was like,
great
wow.
Book.
Oh, it's a great book. Because obviously the category he was in the music industry, and about how the Sex Pistols was one of his acts he signed. And it was just like cool, and the ups and downs. And then I loved also Shoe Dog, a more recent book from Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And they talk about how tough it is. But I always used to read those books and think that's kind of like a romantic tough. It is just such a roller coaster. But that is also what makes it kind of cool, though. Here, your highs are really high when you win something, and then your lows are extremely low because you get this much more existential threat. Can I pay the bills? Can I, keep my team employed? It's a lot tougher than I thought it would be, to be honest. Like I said, that's why you have to be naive to kind of start. But at the same time, I'm like, all the things that were tough, I did learn from. One of the first things I did when I started was I Googled mistakes people make when they launch their own business. Literally the first thing. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this. I got my wife. She wasn't bored. I had to give my job. Obviously, we had to move to a smaller house. We just had twins, so they each had a room because we both had a job, and then we moved to smaller house.
Thrive in the chaos, right?
Yeah, and then they were allowed to share a room, and we didn't have any gardens anymore, no garden at all anymore. A little front porch with like a tree in it. It's not even a tree; it's more like a bush where my son would play, and I felt really guilty that I took his we had a tiny garden before that, but still a little bit of a garden. There's a lot of sacrifice that we had to go through. But so Cindy, my wife, said, okay, let's do it. And I Googled mistakes people make. A Harvard Business Review article came up, and it just had the kind of lean startup thinking, like go to market fast, go to market early. And that is very much known in the kind of digital world, where you just launch a big beta product, put it out there, get the reactions. But it wasn't so much used in the kind of, actual product world. So I took that advice, and I just made loads of different flavors. I had already the Tenzing name, but I had lots of different designs. And I went through 3 potential clients that I thought would be important for me. That was Google, head office, Pod, which is like a Pret, and then King's College. So because I thought I'm going to launch QSR restaurants, I'm launching universities, and I'm going to launch offices. So through contacts and through just walking in, I got in front of those 3 people. And I just said, look, this is the flavor. What would you like most? And they all said, yeah, they all liked it, gave their feedback. I literally changed the designs based on their feedback. And then they all launched it. They all launched Tenzing. And then I thought, it's going to be easy. And that's what actually just exactly the article said, is that you don't only get valuable feedback, it's so much better if I wasn't selling it to them, I was asking what they thought. And that is, of course, the best way to sell, because it became their baby. As we all know, you always think your own baby is the most beautiful one.
Absolutely.
So they were like, okay, let's launch this. And then I launched in those 3. I think that were my only customers for the first 3/4 of a year. Looking back, I should have done that at a way wider, way bigger scale, because I think I could have scaled a lot faster. But then again, you could argue because I didn't make a lot of iterations on the product, maybe if I would have gone too fast in the beginning. There were some mistakes I made, for instance, that I went to Spain too soon. So I was like, okay, we created 150,000 Spanish cans and we sold about 500 of them. So I probably wouldn't have gone to international so soon either. So those are small things along the way that you kind of have to learn.
That's amazing. I think that piece of advice as well, it probably felt too small fry to keep going in and having these one-to-one conversations with small groups of people. And you're probably like, no, I want to go bigger. I want to go bigger. This is way too small fry. But actually, really interesting, isn't it? How Innocent Smoothies, all these different businesses that we know of as being icons in the industry, actually started on these very intimate moments of kind of innocent. Didn't they start at a festival being like, throw your empty into the yes or no pot, deciding on whether or not we should give up our day jobs? And actually, I know that's turned into this lovely story, and I'm sure it wasn't quite like that. As we all know, these stories get kind of romanticized over time. But those intimate moments where you turn somebody into a customer who's going to be a customer long term, actually is a great way to spend time. And actually this huge pay-per-click or paid traffic or an advert or a billboard doesn't always have the same effect, interestingly.
To be honest, I like my stories, but this is 100% true. I like Google is still, and King's College, for instance, are still big customers of ours. They've been so loyal to us. Their pod, unfortunately, no longer exists. When you listen to other entrepreneurs or business people or whatever it might be, I always think be very careful with taking on advice on board, because it sounds great, it gets a lot of likes, So I think starting your own business, you got to learn who are you listening to. But that advice is just 100% true. Go to market. Is there a product market fit? But also in the process, you get people to buy in. And secondly, I think the other advice, I think that is 100% true. It's start with smaller communities. We started with the climbing community, with the running community, because we're up against these massive big dogs with loads of money. And you can actually go to a community and show value to them. So don't be afraid in the beginning to go small, exactly like you said, and just really build a proper relationship with the people that you care about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Huib, for joining. I've really enjoyed our chat, really enjoyed learning about the business and how you've put it together.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, you heard it. You know where you can buy it now. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from our listeners about how they're enjoying Tenzing. So do write in and let us know if you've got it in your local climbing centre. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Food Rebels, which is available on radio stations around the UK and further afield. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Audible. Please remember to subscribe and rate us with 5 stars or follow us. It makes such a difference, not just to our podcast and radio show, but it really helps to support the guests that come on the show with us. We're also on Instagram at food_rebels. So give us a follow, do get in touch. We love hearing from you and let us know what you think. Thanks so much for joining us and make sure you taste the rebellion.